Yeah, we're getting to the business end of the season. It feels like we've been saying that for a while now, but yeah, that's where we are. This is the PHNX Rising podcast presented by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's #1 sportsbook app. I'm Owen Evans. Joining me today, we got Max Simpson.
What's going on?
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about today. A lot happened over this past week. Of course, Max also was not here. Max, why did...
Yeah, I was in Tahoe for one of my best friend's wedding. It was quite beautiful. South Lake Tahoe, highly recommended. I don't know if I told you, but I used to spend some time there when I worked for Reno 1868 FC.
Yeah, did you visit the grave of Reno 1868? I heard that they are buried up there somewhere.
It's buried under the Calneva, right across the street from there at some point. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot happening. Not with Reno 1868, of course. They are still dead. Happy to announce. But Phoenix Rising did get the win over the weekend, for those of you who didn't join us on the post-game show or at the game there. And a lot of other results went, there's quite a few things that impacted Rising's positioning up there. A few games on Sunday, of course, that we're going to delve into. But let's kick it off by just looking at what Phoenix Rising did on Saturday. 5-1 win, of course, it came against children, literally children
literally, yeah.
Quite a few of the cases there. So how much do you think now we can really read into that result?
Truthfully, not much. You're coming up against a team where they started 4 teenagers. The oldest player, if I'm remembering correctly, was 23. And, Rising's average age is somewhere in the mid to late 20s. So right there, it's like you saw the goalkeeper. He's not just a child. Especially like you saw when in that PK, oh my gosh, as a 15-year-old, if you're in that end, and that's not even the tough one, when you are getting swarmed with fans as a 15-year-old and you're just getting heckled and everything like that. He made a couple of good saves and he actually kept this in the game because this could have been a 7-8-1 drubbing, but I can't really read too much into this. When you're playing against a size advantage and experience gap, it makes sense that this result held the Red Bulls too. They held an incredibly high line and very undisciplined. You saw Rising was making those runs in from very deep and just zero tracking. Hands were up and they're not going to get those offsides calls. We're just incredibly sloppy on Red Bulls 2 part, and you got to play who's in front of you, right? You get that result, you do it in dominating fashion as you should. But in terms of how you can evaluate this into the next game moving forward, it's an ego boost, and I kind of only take it as that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but you can't really glean too much team improvement from this.
No, of course, but there's still elements to take from this. Look, it's the first time that Phoenix Rising won back-to-back games since April. That in itself, going into a spell like this where you need to win every game to give yourself even the slimmest of hopes, is, ultimately you've got to do it.
Yeah. No, they did what they needed to do, and I'm not trying to take away from that. But if you ask what can you learn from that? I mean, I guess it is an opportunity to sharpen up and put into practice what you're working on all week. And I mean, during the week, maybe you're practicing against, either lesser members of your squad or just kind of ghost practicing where you're just making the movements without a defense. And essentially that's what happened in the game. There wasn't much defense. So at least you capitalize on what you've been working on in training.
Actually, one thing I will say in there, Bonnie mentioning in the chat here that she wasn't really impressed with how the guys played this past weekend against Red Bulls' kids. Actually, to be fair, there were spells of that game where Rising didn't look as sharp as realistically they should be, especially against opposition that is, frankly, as poor as Red Bulls 2 were. There were spells in that game. After the penalty, it kind of went a bit, and then it's not until late in the second half that you start seeing the goals start coming back in at that point. But overall, look, it is what it is. To me, and I'm intrigued what your view on this one is. Gabby is making the case, Gabby Torres, that he should come back next season. I think he started off with a very good goal very early doors in this game. He won the penalty, if I'm not mistaken, as well, that Aiden Quinn converted. To me, he's got to come back next season if he's going to put performances like this in. And we know the team has the option to bring him back next season. I personally think, although Juan Guerra has been quite coy about quite what he's going to be, he's, I suppose, saying the right things in that sense, in that you don't want to give people the boost of, yes, you're coming back. You want to make him go out there and fight for it at this kind of stage. But at the end of the day, I struggle to see a situation where he doesn't come back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think his movement was excellent. And, I think this is where things can be kind of deceptive, right? If you look at like a FOTMOB, a rating or something like that, where if you score a goal, you're rated as like, 8 and above, and wow, congratulations, you did the job. But that doesn't really tell the entire performance. And in his case, his movement when he received the ball, when he wasn't scoring, it was excellent. On that first goal, where he gets the ball in that right half space, he drifts into the center. He's dribbling past guys. Yes, of course, like we keep on mentioning, maybe not the stature, maybe not able to there. He's able to ride that challenge pretty easily just because these guys are, 3/4 of his size, but he's able to move and make those I guess he gives a bit of a different element to what Rising does, because like we said, a lot of what Rising's been doing is it's traditionally going down to the end line, making crosses in, maybe a bit of early crosses, but to actually see someone progress the ball from outside to in by dribbling, that's hard for a defense. If you have someone dribbling in, going up against your outside backs, your wing backs, and they're taking you head on, that's incredibly challenging, because then you put in a challenge, it's a foul in the middle of the pitch, and that's very difficult to contest. So I loved his movement. I think that Rising needs a player like that, which they've sorely lacked all season. Someone who drives at you and puts the fear into, hey, I'm going to make you foul me. I'm going to either earn that foul, or I'm going to at least create those chances. I was very impressed by his performance.
And I think he's doing something in that kind of role that, say, a Babu Kajai, for example, hasn't been quite scaring the opposition in the same way. Look, it's not that Babu doesn't have pace, that he can't run at people, but it just feels as though he's bringing it to another level.
Yeah, no, and the thing about Babu, like, he has the pace. He can stretch from when he has the ball a bit and when he doesn't. But if he has vertical line straight speed, and that helps, but that doesn't really help when you get into that final third of, okay, if you can have straight line speed, what are you going to do for me when you have a couple defenders on you that you need to shake and bake a little, get off? Torres has that. He showed that very consistently, in against Red Bulls, where you're able to have that lateral movement, cut inside, find players. Then and the beautiful part is, it's not just all about him. When he's cutting inside, making those diagonal runs in with the ball, all the defense is focused on him. It allows runners to go in behind. Like, having that threat of going in diagonally or side to side opens it up entirely for the team. And we saw that when we saw, those 2 goals go in, they get the double yellow. And I mean, by that point, the floodgates were open, but all of that was necessitated by those early runs.
Yeah, and we have to we really have to kind of qualify this, of course. We've been mentioning how New York Red Bulls 2, very young side. Of course, they also spent a lot of that second half down to 10 men, justifiably so. There's that little bit of a shirt pull there. It ends up in the yellow card coming out for stopping a promising attack. It's fine. It makes sense. But it really leaves Red Bulls 2 in the lurch. There's nothing they can really do. Again, they've got a 15-year-old goalkeeper. They've got a 15-year-old in the midfield as well. And all of those things just don't add up to success. I think we were talking about this earlier, and it was the oldest player was in his early 20s.
Yeah, like 23 years old.
Yeah, that's just not a recipe for success. When you're playing at a professional level, you're up against players some of whom have really been around the block. I mean, you even look at guys like Luis Sejas, who came off the bench. He's gone and won the Copa Sudamericana. He's up against teenagers. Then it's just never going to end well for the teenagers. But we'll move on a little bit from just talking about Rising's game. There were, of course, other games on the weekend that did have an impact on Phoenix Rising. The ones we mentioned already on Saturday were RGV losing to Louisville and Oakland Roots. Not a great result for Rising. Oakland Roots getting a winner. 84th minute, Juan Carlos Azacar against Birmingham Legion. There were a couple of other games as well on Sunday. LA Galaxy 2. Piling the misery on Sacramento Republic. Despite being down to 10 men, they did manage to win 2-0 at home against Sac Republic. And Monterey Bay, we'll talk a little bit more about this one later on, but Monterey Bay falling 2-1 at home against Tampa Bay Rowdies. So looking at those results, obviously Monterey Bay's loss, good result for Rising. RGV's loss, good result for Rising. Oakland's win, LA Galaxy's win, not great, are they?
No. And I mean, I know we're going to talk about it later, but it sets up for tomorrow's match to be absolutely physical. I know you had a chance to talk with Juan Guerra about it, and I mean, it's just so funny how we've been talking about this for a while now, and still mathematically it is incredibly slim. I feel we are a broken record on this podcast. It's been now, a month plus, I believe, since we've been saying,
a month plus?
A month, is it not?
It's been a lot more than a month, Max.
Man, has it really been that long since I joined on? Shoot. Okay, well,
since you joined, fine, maybe.
No, it's been dead for a lot longer, but I think that match, against Oakland was very much like, okay, mathematically, it's like it is done. And they keep putting the door alive at the latest possible second. And I'm a skeptic. I'm a skeptic by nature with these things. Like I think it's too much too soon, but it makes it interesting. Like this is why we do this. It makes it an interesting last couple matches stretch of the season for sure.
Yeah, they couldn't make it easy on us. It couldn't be an easy little run into the end of the season. No, it's all up for grabs. The rest of the league is just kind of looking at each other and saying, I don't want it. Do you want it?
No.
I don't want it either. Do you want it? And they're just passing these spots around. RGV, of course, fell out of the playoffs because of the result over the weekend. El Paso now are in 7th. There's actually another game we should probably talk about with El Paso coming up tomorrow as well, later on. And Oakland Roots sitting in 6th now. They're on 43 points. Remember, Phoenix Rising, if they win out, will be on 45. That means that technically speaking, they could overtake 5th place New Mexico. Technically. Which... yeah, there's a lot to go through. Can they be eliminated on Saturday? We'll get into that a little bit more, I think, on Thursday's podcast. The very specific permutations of quite how they could be eliminated or might not be eliminated. But for now, you know what? We're working ourselves up, aren't we, Max?
We sure are.
We're working ourselves up a lot, which means that when we get off of this podcast... and we're going to have to try and relax because we've got work to do tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. I think I know where you're going with this.
You think you know where I'm going with this?
I know.
We're going to have to try and chill out a bit. So how would you choose to chill out, Max?
Oh, man. Well, I would play some FIFA. Oh, no, not FIFA. Oh, gosh. Wrong ad read. I'm so sorry. No, I would say let's, try some of the OGs, especially I hear word on the street is they have a new Sleep Edition gummy, and I've tried it myself. I keep on saying this. I think I had one on the show a couple weeks back, and it is aquaberry flavor. It's quite good. So good that I did have dreams. I dreamt of Rising finishing the stretch, and they squeak into the playoffs. They get bounced in the very first round, but they make it anyway. And it's possible with OGs. You can dream with their new Sleep Edition gummy. Truly is fantastic. We love OGs. All of the different flavors that they have, sativas, the indicas. They have their 1-to-1 THC to CBD. Their new sleep gummy with the CBDN, really great for sleeping. Their microdose edition, you name it. They got all the flavors. We absolutely love OGs. And yeah, honestly, if you guys are looking for a nice sleep, this new gummy really does the stuff. So I'd recommend going to your local dispensary, trying it out if you are 21 or over. I would say tell them I sent you, but I don't really have much clout in the dispensary world. So yeah, just go pick some up.
So make sure to head down to your local dispensary. You can check them out online as well. Visit OGs at ogsbrands.com, OGEEZbrands.com.
Yeah.
And you can check them on Instagram as well at OGs Brands. And again, as Max said, you got to be 21 or older to purchase. Of course, you can also pick your poison here. You can go with what we're doing on here because you mentioned being on OGs previously for a show today. No, we're doing 4 peaks. So,
yeah, what you got? You got the pumpkin porter?
I got the pumpkin porter. It's nice. It's
very
nice.
Good.
It's might as well go and get them while you can because I'm not sure how much longer these ones will be out for, but it's very nice.
Yeah, no, it's pretty delicious. I'm drinking right now the Wow Wheat. They also have
classic.
They do. They also have a Wow Wheat Light if you're not into the super heavy wheat beer. The light version's still quite good. 4 Peaks, they actually have a really cool event. It is, gosh, what is it? Is it technically still Oktoberfest in Germany? It is. It's the last weekend in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. And they are actually doing Oktoberfest this weekend at Tempe Town Lake, Friday through Sunday as well. So check them out. They always have a fun time every year. I personally am going to be there Friday night. So, head on down. Let me know. Say what's up. And we also got some, cool 4 Peaks events going on as well. I know we've been shouting out on our main page for our PHNX members. But we got an awesome takeover event. If you folks are looking to scratch your hockey itch, again, for only PHNX members, Friday, October 14th, starting at 4 p.m. Check out the link that we're going to be putting out on our website. Ticket to the game, 2 beers, free food, giveaways. It's going to be an awesome time. Just like checking out Four Peaks atmosphere and everything like that.
Remember, again, with Four Peaks, much like with OGs, you do have to be 21 or over, and remember to drink responsibly, which we're definitely doing here, of course.
Yeah. No, I'm hydrating, by the way. We don't. This is not a water sponsor, but I'm trying to hydrate itself. I saw producer Sean is also hydrating as well after enjoying a golden lager.
And also, Sean just appearing there. Sean, can you give us any comment on your performance on FIFA, by the way? Sean was playing against Max, for those of you who went away. Sean was playing against Max on FIFA just outside of this studio prior to us coming on. So can you give us a rundown of how that went for you, Sean?
Listen, Max and I are pretty evenly matched.
We
had no runaways, but I am 0 for 3 against Max. 2 losses. Well, 1 loss in extras, 1 loss on pens, and 1 in regulation. I was playing with AC Milan. It just did not. It couldn't get anything going. It was pretty tragic.
True words from the 2022 Rick Shantz of FIFA there, Sean Paz. Right.
Whoa.
Moving on.
That is uncalled for.
Moving on.
Unbelievable.
That might have been a bit harsh. That was probably very harsh. Multiple parties involved, to be fair. Multiple parties involved. Right. Moving on. We spoke about the game on Saturday, and of course, the game on Wednesday when Phoenix Rising beat Sacramento. What kind of an impact that could have on the morale? I did get to ask Juan Guerra about that today, so let's take a listen to what he had to say about the impact of that on their morale.
Huge. It's always better to fix scenarios while you win. It always makes it also easier for the guys to absorb more information. And if you ask me as a coach, I really like to go after the guys a bit more after we win than sometimes when we lose. When after a win, maybe they're a bit more humble and they absorb information a bit better on the things that they need to fix. Sometimes, after you lose, it's a bit harder to fix scenarios, and sometimes the players don't absorb information the same way. So it feels good. It feels good to win games. It feels good to score goals, and not just so much results. It's also about performances. I think the team is in a clear ascending curve, but we have to make sure that we keep our foot on the pedal, on the pedal, and we keep pushing, because again, this weekend is going to be very, very hard against a rival that is doing things very well. As well, and a coaching staff that I know very well. And last time they were here, I know they didn't leave happy. So they're going to come after us this weekend for sure.
So that was Juan Guerra talking about the impact of the morale, or impact on the morale of those games from the last week. Look, I think this club is going in, I think, a lot happier. You see it even in just some of the stuff that's put out on social media from the players. They seem a lot happier now. And of course they will be. They got, look, Red Bulls 2 might have been an expected result. Sacramento Republic wasn't. That was an achievement. It's not necessarily that Sacramento were very good in that one, but over the course of the season, they have been a better side than Phoenix Rising have been looking to be. So it's good news. It bodes well, I think, for this weekend in what's going to be a very critical match. I mean, any slim hope, of course, relies on them getting a win in that game. A loss and they're done. I'm not entirely sure of the permutations again on a draw at this particular moment, but it's good to see at least that there's a bit of positivity in the camp, and that it's not even just necessarily the forced positivity that we saw towards the end of the Rick Shantz era, that it is something that feels as though it's more organically positive, let's say.
Yeah, no, of course. And I mean, with so few games left, the margin of error, it's no secret. It is, very, very little. You do not control your own destiny. So all you can do is play who's in front of you and win. And I think the interesting part about it is, at this juncture in the season, especially coming off how they've played the last 2 matches, particularly against Red Bulls 2, where they bagged a lot of goals. It's great for confidence. It shows a bit of that free-flowing play. Because they have to produce wins, and you can't even think of a draw. I almost wonder if, as a player, you're faced with the if we don't win out, we might be in trouble. But the spin zone alternative of that is, if you have to win out and you have to be more attacking and more free flowing, maybe that empowers you a bit more to play less rigid and be like, hey, we have absolutely nothing to lose. We have to bag a lot of goals. Let's go forward, showcase those goals and that attacking power and flair that we showed against Red Bulls 2, and just play looser. I mean, we've seen it a bit in these last 2 matches, all things considered, again, with the competition and everything. But if I'm looking at it as a player, and if I'm going off the vibes that you're mentioning a bit, that's exciting to me, even given where the team is at. It's still overall, again, it's a long shot, and I get there. It's not like, oh, wow, it's not stressful or anything like that. But that's where you can kind of spin it as, you have to play for the win, so go out and get it.
Yeah, and I think the thing to note on that one, I see Thomas there in the thing about we're going to ball out these next 2. Look, Phoenix Rising could win these next 2 games and not make the playoffs. It's entirely possible. In fact, it's probably likely, right, that even if they win the 2 games, they still don't make it in. But it does add 2 things. Number one is that it gives the supporters and the players confidence going into next season. It picks the spirits back up, especially knowing that there will be a core of players that will return next year. And number 2 is it lets us talk about the New Mexico incident yet again, and keep bringing up the fact that why was that game allowed to be played? Because it's very possible now we're going to get to the end of the season, and that those points will be the difference between making or missing the playoffs. And yeah, we're going to have a lot to talk about that, I feel like, over the off-season, let's say, as Phoenix Rising, if they don't make it into the playoffs. The fact that the impact that game had, just, having to go out there on a couple of days' notice, bringing children, not being able to name a full 18 because to do so would violate the league's collective bargaining agreement, because it would have too many academy players involved. It's just a lot of talk about that, I feel, will come up, especially as this gets close. But then again, there's the other positive, I suppose, to it, which is that if we can go into that last game of the season at least, and Phoenix Rising still has something to play for, it's just going to add a bit of excitement. It may well be that, and with Rising being one of the last to kick off that night, it may well be that they show up that morning they have something to play for, and that night they don't. But even just keeping that bit of energy going, that there could be something to play for, I think is good.
100%. And I mean, I'm looking at Adrian's comment where it's, feels good to see them enjoying their time on the pitch again. We realize that we're, playoffs mathematically not impossible, but it's very unlikely, and there might be something to play for, there might not, as you're saying. We all know, though, that it's not just about this year. And if you're going through it with a tunnel vision of, we want to make the playoffs, that's all that important, I get that. It's not, though, all that's important. The bigger picture is you are going through a massive team culture change, a new identity in a sense of how you're playing on the pitch, how you're representing your club off the pitch, and what kind of players are being in there. So the fact that, to Adrian's point, they are enjoying their time on the pitch again, I think, to me, that's the bigger thing to play for. And I'm not trying to disregard, it is important to win now. I completely get that. I'm not throwing out the window. But it is a slow burn to something where you can never control the wins and losses. But if you're looking at who's going to be on this team next year, the fact that this foundation is slowly being built now, these are these games where no matter whether it's in the playoffs, whether it amounts to something or not, it does have meaning. And I think that if the players are inspired to play for something and it's not just dead on arrival, they have zero chance to make it in, it will show in their play, and that just empowers them that much further. Like, this is a cool time for the last couple matches. We'll see how it plays out, but there's not a downside to it.
No, there's not. And I mean, the other thing to note in there is that something that people keep bringing up and have kept bringing up over the course of the season is just perhaps there was lack of mental resilience or mental toughness in some of these players, that they would get down and you just see the heads drop. Right now, I feel what we're seeing is a team that, despite the fact that they are down per se, they are, pretty much written off by most people, and were a couple of weeks ago just completely written off by people. They're not going to turn it around. Are at least putting up a fight. And right now, there's nothing they can do except win these 2 games. If they can do that, regardless of what happens elsewhere, at least you can say that they put up a fight. One other thing to note in here, we're talking about morale being boosted. Of course, there was a Team of the Week came out today, and a few rising names in there. Ben Lunt, goalkeeper, Joe Farrell as a defender, and on the bench was JJ Williams. So quite a few rising players there getting national recognition today.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. I mean, both like solid performances, by Farrell and by Ben. I mean, even JJ Williams is very interesting. Him coming off the bench and being named to the USL Team of the Week on the bench is 2 assists, very nice 2 assists, setting up others. The goal he scored was nice, but I think, again, it's such a luxury to have. We've talked about it for the last couple of weeks. If you have 2 strikers who are very much in form, how his runs against Red Bulls 2 were incredibly anticipatory. The goal, one of his assists, he started his run probably like 40, 50 yards deep, and he just timed it well. He saw that it was playing a high line and just ran onto it very, very well. I think the other thing that I really enjoyed is, like, with Ben Lunt, you always have a chance. And yeah, he's had a bit of some moments where we're thinking, like, could you have saved that? He sometimes, I think, lets some of the, I guess, cluttered boxes or ones where there's a lot of people kind of stamp him in. But I feel confident with that keeper, with that front line, and, like, good on them, because it's been a rough season. It's been a long go of it. So, like, good on them for getting those kudos and being recognized, like, on a national level.
We mentioned, of course, that there are other games that Rising has to worry about outside of their own. One of those is being played, well, 2 of those you could argue are being played tomorrow. We'll start with the one that involves Phoenix Rising's opponent on the weekend. That is RGV. They are traveling away to Memphis. I managed to ask Wangera today what he thought and what he was going to be looking for in that game between RGV and Memphis. Here's what he had to say.
Haven't changed much. And I've had the opportunity to face Wilmer many times now in my coaching career, a few times as an assistant coach, and now it's already been 3 times as a head coach. And Wilmer's a guy that when things are working, he sticks to them. He hasn't really rotated the team a lot. That's the first thing I'm going to look at tomorrow. I'm going to see if he's going to make rotations. Also, the way he's playing, he's been playing very similar this past, we'll call it 6 games. And I want to see that. I want to see if he's gonna change some of the behaviors that he's been implementing in offensive phases, and also some of the behaviors that he's been doing defensively. I want to see if he's going to high press or if he's just going to sit back. And then also, I mean, they have a couple of players on yellow cards. Maybe he makes rotations to try to save them for Saturday. If I'm him, I wouldn't save anybody. They got to win tomorrow, and that's the most important thing. I always said as a coach, the most important game is the game the next game you're going to play. So for them, their most important game is tomorrow, and I want to see those behaviors. How are they going to take that game? And then obviously we have to make sure that we have the group fresh for Saturday, because they have to travel back, and it's going to be a long travel day for them, and we're going to have to go over there, and hopefully we get them a little tired. We'll see.
Well, that's why I mentioned, of course, it's a must-win for RGV. If they don't win, or if they lose tomorrow, at least, if they lose, then Phoenix Rising can overtake them on Saturday with a win in Edinburgh. But it's a tough game. That's a really tough game when you're coming up against the Memphis 901 side that, yes, lost their last game. They went to Miami. They lost their 1-0. But some of the results they've been putting up besides that, I mean, they beat Louisville in Louisville. They went to Charleston and, well, they hosted Charleston, and they put 5 on them. They went away to Atlanta United 2 and put 4 on them. And yes, those sides aren't great, of course. We appreciate that. But still, a lot of goals in that team. And, I mean, we saw them against Phoenix Rising this season. They were tough. They were a tough opponent, especially on the questionable baseball surface that they choose to play on, where the mound isn't quite flat and all of that kind of nonsense going on. It never is, but it's worse there than most of the other baseball stadiums. I can tell you that much. I've seen a few baseball stadiums this year, and that one is bad. Do you see RGV getting a result tomorrow?
I mean, it's interesting, right? Both clubs, like you mentioned, they lost 1-0 in their last match, but before that, they're both on each a streak of 4 unbeaten, and something's got to give. I mean, Memphis, they're playing at home. They haven't played at home quite recently. They had that 5-0 drubbing of Charleston, but that's about it. So I think they're going to get a bit of a boost. I think it's possible. RGV, we've seen they hang around, and given their run of form, it's very possible. But I mean, if we're doing score predictions, and maybe this is the optimist coming out of me, both these clubs have scored a fair bit of goals. Give me a 2-1.
You're taking a 2-1 to Memphis.
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
yes, I am.
I think one of the things that's worth noting here that really does play into this, and is also pretty important for Saturday as well when we look at this, is that RGV is a pain to get to. Okay, it's not easy to get to. I'm having to leave on Friday this week because it's just not great to try and get down there to McAllen, or I'm flying into McAllen, it's Edinburgh they play in. And so it's not a fun trip for them, especially having played on Saturday. They presumably had to fly today, probably quite early because you don't want to risk things going wrong and it's tough to get out of there. You've got to go connecting in places to get to wherever you're going to. And then that's it. They're going to Memphis. They got to play a game. They've got to come back on the Thursday. And especially with the connecting flights, that takes time. That takes a lot of your time. You getting a proper training session in. The players going to be as well prepared, especially if they take their first choice team over there, which I think they will. I think they're going to have to. It's even if they get a result tomorrow, which I'm not convinced that they will, I do think that Memphis will at least get a draw in that game, if not beat them. I think Memphis is probably most likely to beat them, and the bookies tend to back that one up as well. I think that this could put them in a rough situation for Saturday, and that's advantage Phoenix Rising at that point. But I did mention the bookies favoring them there. Let's take a look at the odds for that game. I've got them here in a second. So this is on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Memphis 901 at -110 for that game. RGV at +230. A draw at +275. You taking Memphis there?
No, I'm still taking Memphis. I mean, Second in the East, goal differential of 30 throughout the season. It's been a long season. We're getting towards the end there. I mean, I think it's going to be close, and I mean that's why I put 2-1 because these clubs have been scoring decently recently, but it's just a tough stretch. And I know this is all just seeing what's on the pitch. You have to factor in the mental side, that in the back of your mind, if you're RGV, you can say that you're going to be focused on the match in front of you, which you have to, but you know that match on Saturday against Rising is looming. And especially if you are at home, you're going to be on short rest. Do you think like, well, I'm not saying I'm not going to give it my all, but if you go down 1 or 2 early, like how much do you conserve yourself? Do you live to fight that day on Saturday? So it's the mental games really play a big factor here.
Yeah, well, you mentioned 2-1, you said, to Memphis, just so if anyone wants to take Max's betting advice, which I'm not sure how much stock we should put in this, but we'll see. Memphis to win 2-1 is +800.
Yeah.
You can win some money on that one.
You can win some. I mean, listen, I usually say, when in doubt, pick the draw. And match starts with a draw. Could end in a draw. You never know. But no, we all know that these games are incredibly hard to predict. DraftKings that has it all laid out there for you, but play around with it. Have some fun. Go with my winnings. I'll be picking it. Maybe I'll win some money.
One other game to note tomorrow, of course, El Paso. As I mentioned, they are on 43 points. They're currently in 7th spot. They've got 3 games to play, but they're all coming in very quick succession here. You got Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday. Of course, they're not playing on the final Saturday. You've got an odd number of teams in the league. It's not going to quite work out that everyone plays on that final day. They're hosting Colorado Springs, and this is where I'm interested here because Colorado Springs Switchbacks here are the underdog going into this game, +240. Colorado Springs to win away to El Paso. Don't get me wrong. Colorado Springs have had their problems now. Haji Barry, of course, has left for Egypt. That was confirmed yesterday. It's for a USL record transfer fee is what it's been announced as. And they've had some tactical changes since he left. They've looked like they're more in a free since he's left. But personally, I think it's possible that they lose. I think it's possible that Colorado Springs win that game in El Paso. El Paso dropped points at home to RGV. They lost 2-0 in that game. They lost against San Diego at home. In fact, El Paso have only won one of their last 3 home games. Guess who it was against? Yeah, we were there. That was Juan Guerra's first game in charge. But hey, I wouldn't rule it out though. A Colorado Springs win in this game, especially at plus 240. That's not a bad shout.
No, not a bad shout. I mean, heck, you maybe even a little parlay action if you want to get a little frisky, make it interesting.
Ooh,
yeah.
So what you going with? Colorado Springs.
I go Colorado Springs and Memphis.
Memphis at plus 549.
Considering how results go, like that's.
And in fact, if you really want to do that, if you really want to do the midweek USL mental parlay, add Lou City to win at home against Detroit. It goes up to plus 890.
That's pretty.
That's not bad.
Across 3 matches, it's what that's telling me is while the odds are, of course, you're going to win a nice chunk of money. It's not. It could be a lot more staggering. So it's not unheard of. It's not unheard of.
Of course, you want to bet on the other type of football as well that I commonly deride in these podcasts, but hey, we've got to mention it. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win. They get $200 in free bets if they do. Just imagine how you could spend that money betting on USL games that clearly we all have the inside edge on and seem to get wrong. You could bet on midweek USL with those free bets. Yeah,
you can bet on USL, you can bet on NFL. I'm going to get this out of the way because I'm going to try to beat you to it. You can even bet on Premier League. I bet on Tottenham in the North London derby.
Penalty merchant Harry Kane.
The absolutely worst part about that was as soon as he was awarded the penalty, I'm like, yes, and it was immediately washed out by Owain in my head. Penalty merchant Harry Kane. And listen, that man converted. And that was about the only good thing in that match. So I lost money, but you win some, you lose some. Better than your old saying of what happens when you bet $5 on Man United.
You lose $5.
Exactly.
Yeah, indeed. But you can actually win more if you go and give us some stepped up same game parlays. So for every leg that you add, you can boost your winnings up to 100%. Payouts are bigger than ever, so why are you going to bet anywhere else? Yeah. Make things even sweeter, you can throw down on those stepped up same game parlays once per game day, all season long for the NFL. Pretty simple. Go download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use promo code PHNX. It's promo code PHNX on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See those show notes for details, and then make sure to come on here and tell us about how you're winning money on these USL games by betting against what we're telling you to bet on.
Yeah, and even if you're like Thomas, where it's deserved for supporting Spurs, that's fine because hey, I'll keep betting them. Maybe I'll win a little, maybe I'll lose a little. But what I like to do is even if you bet the opposing team, then that way either you win some money or your team wins, it's a win-win. It's very. I do that all the time. I know a lot of the guys do that here. So yeah, have fun with it.
Yeah, and then you can even go and spend your money on your winnings that you're getting off of there on fun things like we've actually come in matching t-shirts.
Yeah,
today.
we did not plan this.
Because Max is kind of covering it up, but we didn't plan this. We both came. Just slowly. What?
I got you, buddy. There we go. Yeah. So, I came in with a couple. Some of these Hawaiian lays. I got laid twice actually, and Owen just got laid, which is better than Ramon getting laid because he's been talking about that. That's a nice callback right there. It's already off the rails. But no, you can get some of these.
You can get back on those rails.
You can get some of those sweet Phoenix Rising tees, scarves on the PHNX locker. And yeah, we got all kinds of fun stuff. Check us out. And again, tell them I sent you. Doesn't really do much, but tell them I sent you anyway.
Right. We got to get this back on the rails somehow. No. Okay. Right, let's pause, take a breath. We got to go back to serious face now because we do have some actually quite serious things to talk about. Yeah. We did mention we were going to bring this up earlier when we were speaking about Monterey Bay against Tampa Bay Rowdies, but there was a league statement today referring to that game. So let's just take a peek at that. USL saying today that the USL has opened an investigation into allegations of foul and abusive language on the field during the USL Championship match between Monterey Bay FC and the Tampa Bay Rowdies on October the 2nd. The USL strictly prohibits any form of harassment or discrimination on or off the field. Such actions are against the values of the USL, which may apply punitive measures for violations of this policy. Now, we don't have more details at this time as to who is being accused of what, but it's just getting frustrating, isn't it? It feels like every season in USL, We see this time after time after time. It happened last year several times with fans, and there were a couple of incidents with players as well where investigations happened. And at least one of those cases, the investigation concluded that they couldn't really conclude anything, which of course leaves nobody feeling particularly great. But in this case, it comes just a couple of weeks after Monterey Bay spoke out on social media about the fact that Sekou Kone, one of their players, was racially abused on social media. It's getting to a point where it's just disappointing that we have to see this time and time and time again.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other way to put it, and I'm trying to be delicate with this because I understand things like that. We need to learn from more information. Investigations need to go on. You actually need to dig deeper into this. But the issue that I have with this is when these pop up every season, especially with Monterey Bay, where this is, supposedly the second time in, near consecutive weeks with, let's call it the same player. If it is so, it's frustrating that all we get is a statement. Again, I understand that more has to be looked into and these things have their due process, but how much does that do when the same thing keeps happening? And I know that in other leagues, in previous instances, you've seen everything from, on the, I guess, more immediate end, supporters not either being limited or no capacity. And on other ends, you like points deduction. And again, we have to take this one step at a time. And I also understand that, if there's abuse on social, how do you vet that? There's a lot of things that need to be done. But there has to be a more effective way to go about this than just issuing a hollow statement, which you got to do the PR spin. You got to do what you need to do. But we all know, come on, they're doing it seems like the bare minimum again. The action has to take place if you want action and changes to happen.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that's most disappointing now, the thing that brings the most scrutiny perhaps on this one, we've been disappointed in the past by feeling as though the investigations that USL conducts haven't necessarily been as thorough as they possibly could have been. They haven't necessarily taken as strong an action as they could have done, especially when, even in one case, it was proved that there were issues with standards at one of these games. There was a point whereby, I think even with some of the fans at New Mexico, it was remarkable that New Mexico United couldn't seem to track down any kind of recollection of this. And yet a day or two after it happened, a local news outlet there had an interview with someone who said that they were the ones who reported it to security in the first place, and they brought security over who weren't interested in dealing with it. Look, at the end of the day, there has to be accountability for clubs and for players and for fans who engage in this kind of behavior. And the attention now is on USL, I think, in part because, and we're about to get onto this in a second, but USL, of course, are about to launch a women's league. We have seen one women's league in this country that has been really caught up in issues of not taking investigations and allegations and accusations seriously over a variety of matters. It's resulted in a serious report that came out yesterday, an independent investigation from US Soccer, and an E60 documentary that came out today. USL really has to make a statement with this investigation that it takes the welfare of its players, the emotional welfare of its players seriously, and that it investigates and take these things seriously, because next year, you're getting into a position where are people going to necessarily trust you entering a different sphere that's already had issues?
Yeah, I mean, well said. We keep going back to, and I've advocated for this many times, and I've said this often on this show, that this is grassroots soccer, but at the same time, this isn't just. There is professionalism at this stage. Yes, it's at the most accessible point that fans get into, and this is how you grow fandom at the very local levels. But these organizations, they have departments, they have front offices. USL has a front office in place. Yes, there needs to be clearly much more policies implemented and more procedures to this. But the fact that things keep happening like this, and there's such a lack of continuity, whether it's on the team side, whether it is USL, whether it's a mix of both, it's an organizational failure that keeps happening. And it's like, it's frustrating. You almost don't find the word sometimes, because this isn't an isolated incident. The fact that there is the W League launching, if you're a fan of these clubs, or if you're looking to get further into it, how do you look at this situation and think, wow, that's something I truly want to support? And the thing that USL needs to rectify, whether it's reporting on their end or the club, whatever, it ultimately falls on the league as a whole. And if you don't address it properly and you don't strike it, you don't cut you don't cut the head off the snake, it keeps on spitting the poison. And that's what keeps happening. So there has to just be a stronger measure. Again, there's different ways to go about that, but we can't just keep having hollow statements. It's that time is done. It's happened. Those statements have happened and nothing's resulted from it.
Exactly. Now I mentioned some of the things there. We'll talk about it now. Obviously, big news in NWSL over this past week. The independent report led by Sally Yates into abuse in NWSL came out yesterday. It's a full 319 pages long, including references. If anybody wants to check it out, it is available publicly on the internet. But it really tells a story of serious failures at all levels, from US soccer right down to teams and the league as well. I think, though, we really have to consider, look, this is a USL-focused podcast. We're going to focus on the USL aspect to this, which is that Racing Louisville, one of the teams implicated in here, and there are now a lot of calls for leadership at Louisville to step aside, including from Louisville fans. It's the same leadership in Racing Louisville and Lou City. And the allegations that are being made both in this report and in separate reporting locally in Louisville are serious and have very serious consequences if true for the people that run that club. And personally, looking at it, I struggle to see a situation where club president James O'Connor can regain credibility coming out of this one.
Yeah, I mean, you read the report, we were just watching the E60 special right before this, and it just paints it's an ugly picture. And you've already seen in the last year, widespread change, throughout the NWSL. And, if we're looking at from the USL perspective, you've seen change enacted on that spectrum as well. The thing that we go back to is it's again, like how can you look at this from a club standpoint and not call for widespread change and want different leadership in there? Because you can't just say, oh, I wasn't aware or whatever. Again, it comes down to an organizational failure and seeing what's in there. And I know you have dissected this report pretty thoroughly. You can touch on it, pretty accurately, but it makes it very, very tough to rationalize what's happening, but then figuring out what you do next. I mean, it's just hard to come up with the words sometimes when these things keep on happening, especially in a club where you do have, you have the USL side, but you also have the NWSL side. I think a lot of it is overshadowed by the team's performance on the field. But that's just the issue, is like that can't happen. And you see in the report that a lot of the teams who these things were happening were very successful clubs. And when you have clubs that are doing well, the last thing you want is to rock the boat by reporting and actually bringing these things to light. And this is where, again, this organizational failure keeps happening.
And I think the other problem just is that certain issues were just completely ignored by leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've got the report in front of me at the moment. I just did a quick search for O'Connor's name and found out some of just to make sure I was getting these specific points right here. But there's one instance where it said that O'Connor and Brad Estes, who was at the time the club president, O'Connor at that point was was, I believe, executive vice president, said that it had been brought up about the fact that Christy Holly had a relationship with one of his players. And the quote in here is, and they had no problem with it. So, I mean, these are just real questions of judgment. And it's just poor judgment, incredibly poor judgment to think that that's appropriate to be something on the record of a coach that you're about to hire. But I mean, of course, they're not the worst ones. There's a lot of allegations as well in there about the leadership at the Portland Timbers. Obviously, the Timbers and the Thorns also, much like Louisville, share a lot of resources between the two teams. And Wilkinson in there, their general manager, and Merritt Paulson, their owner. I'm struggling to see, and there were a couple of other names listed in there as well. I'm struggling to see how they survive this. I think that it may be a painful, long drawn out process, but in all these cases, it seems as though the fans are completely turning on them, as they should in a situation like this. And I just don't see them surviving. And look, obviously, it goes a lot deeper. You can't fix this by just getting rid of certain people. Serious safeguards need to be put in place. There needs to be serious questioning as well as to not only US soccer, NWSL, but Safe Sport as well, which is an entity, is, let's face it, a sticky plaster that was put out there when the gymnastics scandal happened, and it doesn't really... it's not fit for purpose in a lot of ways, unfortunately. And there's just a lot of things in that sense that have to be resolved. But at the same time, I don't see how these people continue, even in the men's game. They quite frankly shouldn't be there.
No, it's again, we keep on going back to it, is systematic failures that are perpetuated by not wanting to rock the boat, by being comfortable with what's happening. And I mean, it's sad that it takes, brave people coming forward to actually shine a light on this when it's not like it wasn't reported. It's not like the procedures weren't taken. It's the fact that
there weren't procedures. That was the problem half the time.
Yes.
There weren't procedures to follow.
Correct. It's you know what I mean, though. I should rephrase as they made the attempts to reach out to the people that they thought were the right people, and they reported it in their mind the best way possible. And a lot of the times it went to the right people, just nothing was done.
Nothing.
And that's the issue, is if it goes to the right people and they don't do anything, they are the wrong people to be in that position.
Absolutely. Right. That was quite a grim ending to the episode. We knew this was coming up when we saw the various things kind of flooding the timeline today and yesterday. But you know what? Let's try and end on a little bit of a positive. There is one home game left for Phoenix Rising. Going back to Phoenix Rising now, there is one home game left. Atlanta United 2 coming up in just a couple of weeks' time. And if you haven't got your tickets already, you can make sure to hop on over to the Game Time app using the link in our description here. And you can save up to 60% if you buy your tickets late on there. So make sure to check out that link in the description. Again, we saw tickets as low as $4 at one point for one of the Phoenix Rising home games. And I'm not going to argue with that. That's pretty cheap right there. Pretty cheap.
Yeah, it's pretty dang nice. I mean, I think the biggest thing where we're working on with Game Time is everything that we do, they really support us, which is super nice and very, very helpful. And I mean, yeah, you can take a look at the online, take a look at the notes in the description, and yeah, that's where you can get that link. Score on some awesome tickets, not just for Phoenix Rising, but if you happen to go to other games throughout the Valley, Cardinals are going, Suns are about to start their season again. If you're a Coyotes fan,
maybe they'll be slightly affordable on that app.
Yeah, but no, they really are the best place to go to get your tickets. We've used them before. We highly recommend them.
Yeah. So there's one other thing as well. We got a shout out in the chat there for
I see that. Oh yes, thank you, Bobby. This Bad Birdie hat. So we were working with Bad Birdie. Great fun folks at Bad Birdie. A couple of us got hooked up with some hats, some nice polos, and if you would like to save that coin through Bad Birdie, use the code PHNX. 15% off at badbirdiegolf.com. They launch new editions all the time, and the really cool thing is I'm a decent golfer in the sense that Well, no,
Define
no, that's
decent, please.
Do we call
define decent?
Do we count like mini golf or putt? Because that's
no.
Then I am not a good golfer. But even if you're not a golfer, they just look nice. They're breathable. They're super.
It's like playing five-a-side and saying, "Give me a contract. I want to play for Man United."
What are you trying? What are you trying to say? Oh well. Oh great. Oh why you got to put a why Man United? I can set my aspirations higher than them.
What, Spurs?
Oh, you better bet table. The table does not lie. Yes, but
you know what they say? You can bet $100 on Man United, and you can bet $100 on Tottenham Hotspur to win the league, and you'll lose $200.
Yes, but Bobby, I love it. Yes, they do. They have a new drop coming tomorrow. They do drops on the weekly. It seems like use our code PHNX, 15% off. Bobby, I'll even do you one better. Tweet at me, Max David Simpson. You purchase it. I'll buy one with you. We'll rock it in solidarity. So yeah, tweet out your order with me, and we'll go from there. I'll wear it on the next show. How about that? We can be twinning. Yeah.
All right. Well, Max, can you believe it? We've made it through a show without Ramon.
I know, it's different.
So Ramon, this is the problem now, is that if Rising, Ramon is off with the league that shall not be named at the moment. The league that shall not be named. If Rising win on Saturday, then they've won 3 games without Ramon. Do we let him back?
Well,
do we lock the door? Do we just lock the door and leave him outside?
I'm trying to think, because I've done, every show I've done with you both. I did one show, just me and him. This is our first show, just us two. And Rising didn't win when it was just us two on the show. They did win twice when it's us two on the show. So I'm not a mathematician, but I'm kind of saying, Ramon, man, you had a good run, man. I mean, you'll always be a part of the community.
Well, anyway, we made it through the show without him. So, Max,
cheers.
And make sure to join us again on Thursday at 6 o'clock when we will be talking through in more detail Rising's upcoming game against RGV, including breaking down what happens tomorrow after they've played Memphis.